We talk about corporate responsibility on this episode with Mitsubishi fuel economy cheating, questionable Snapchat tactics, and Fiat Chrysler fixing some shifters. We also talk about the Mini Clubman next on Talking Cars. Hi everybody, and welcome to Talking Cars with Consumer Reports. I'm Tom Muchler.
I'm Jake Fisher.
And I'm John Lincove.
Well, we've got more car companies behaving badly in the news, don't we, John? Mitsubishi's been up to no good for quite a while, it seems.
Yeah, at first we thought it was a couple years. Turns out it's just 25 years of falsifying fuel economy data
1991.
in Japan. Yeah,
no,
sure.
no
You know, they were wearing flannel, grungy, and making up some numbers back in Japan.
Listen to Nirvana and cooking the numbers.
Exactly.
That's how they roll.
Yep.
Well, actually, it's about rolling, isn't it?
It's
about
is,
rolling
yeah.
resistance.
It is. They were, for their small cars, but possibly for almost their entire line of vehicles, they were using U.S. fuel economy testing standards, which bias the numbers a little bit higher towards highway speeds versus lower speeds, which is the Japanese standard, because they have a lot more dense traffic there.
Right.
And they were boosting the numbers a little bit. And it seems like they would boost it and then boost it a bit, and then by the time the vehicle got to production and they were putting out official paperwork, it was 10% or higher than what it was actually getting.
Wow. Now, what are the consequences of this to a consumer here?
Well, I mean, this is really interesting because, I mean, you know, unraveling the story, and John said it really well, I mean, it's hard figuring out exactly what happened. And as John said, it's actually Japanese market vehicles. And
many of them are tiny mini cars,
And
high cars.
They're things that would fit inside of our mini cars here
Right.
in the
They'll
US.
fit inside of that mini.
Exactly.
You know, and a lot of people say, well, they're using the U.S. test. Well, it doesn't mean that the U.S. test is wrong or anything, but U.S. driving is different. U.S. driving, they go on the highway a lot more, whereas people in Japan, they tend to be in, you know, cities and whatnot. So it's a different standard. But the point is that, you know, it is possible to go and falsify these numbers. And this is not the only time we have seen this. Yes, this is some Japanese market small cars, but we've seen it here. We've seen it with Hyundai. We've seen it with Kia before.
Yep.
They have admitted, yes, we kind of tweaked the numbers a little bit. And it is an order of, you know, 10% here and there. And we actually caught an issue with the Ford, where Ford was saying, you know, our hybrid's getting 47 miles per gallon. Turned out it was getting much less.
And it wasn't even them falsifying per se, it was being able to use loopholes within the regulations. What Ford was able to say, oh, our C-Max hybrid gets the same fuel economy as a much more aerodynamically efficient Fusion hybrid.
Yeah, that was a big part of it. I mean, there was certainly a loophole there. There was also some numbers even beyond that they had to change. They were like, oh, we didn't do the math right. But I mean, whatever it is that, you know, when you buy something, you buy a car, and they say the car gets this fuel economy, you know, it would be great to know that it really did get that, you know, and this is part of the reason that, you know, I mean,
That's why Volkswagen's in so much trouble, because they said clean
diesel, exactly.
Well,
not so much.
Here's the big part is that it went unknown, and it probably would have, except the fact that Nissan took over development of these cars and said,
because they were buying them from Mitsubishi.
they were buying,
joint
Mitsubishi was
venture.
building them as a joint venture, exactly.
Right.
And Nissan took over development for the next generation. They said, we can't get these numbers that you're getting, what the heck's going on? So again, it takes an outside group, whether it's another manufacturer, or in the case of Volkswagen, West Virginia professor and you know, doing work for the EU, to come up with this. So the numbers that the EPA or that in Japan, whatever their transport ministry is, they're kind of rubber stamping it. Oh, you guys said it's getting this. Sounds good to us. Put on the window sticker.
And the outrageous part is, like you said, 1991.
Yeah.
That's outrageous that this went on for that long and was not caught until almost by accident by another automaker. 25 years. And look at the other examples. Look at you know, again, the diesels from Volkswagen. These went on sale 2009.
Right.
What is it, 2016? I mean, come on. It's like, you know, it takes that long to catch these issues. The Ford, I mean, if we weren't out there and we do our own fuel economy, and, you know, I run the testing here and we wind up, you know, doing a lot of tests that a lot of people ask, why do we do fuel economy tests? Because the government does it, and there's EPA stickers, and I could go look at the sticker on the car. Well, we go and we, you know, in a garage like this, we slice into all the fuel flows, and we sit there and we put in meters and we do the tests ourselves to make sure that the cars are actually performing in the real world what they are advertised to do. And if we didn't go and say, hey, these Fords are not getting anywhere near 47, I wonder if that would have gone on further too.
Yeah, you have to understand that within the automotive world, there are so many tests and so many ratings and so many bits of numbers. I mean, it's even things as more pedantic as tow ratings.
Right.
You know, that we've heard stories of
Yes.
companies taking out most of the interior of the truck except for the driver's seat, to reduce weight. And then, they've moved to a more standardized SAE standard. But I mean, we've also been on, we've talked with the SAE, the Society of Automotive Engineers, about standardizing how people measure interiors, even things
Sure.
as simple as how much room is in the trunk, how much space is in the back seat. There has to be this effort to get everyone all on board with something that's actually realistic and verifiable and
Right.
quantifiable.
Well,
and the stakes are even higher when it comes to emissions and when it comes to fuel economy.
Well, and safety and all these things.
Sure.
I mean, the thing is that these are self-reported, right? I mean, the government does not have the money and the resources to do all these tests on all the cars. So what happens is the automakers do the tests themselves.
And then they spot check. The
And they
government will
spot check.
a couple. But 10% or 20% isn't the world of automobiles.
Right, exactly.
No, so you've developed this situation where there's all these numbers, there's all these claims, and it's very hard to verify.
It's like everyone could be the best. I'm the biggest. Well, I'm the
It's
biggest
all-
on
it's
that
all Lake
metric.
Wobegon, yeah.
Right, exactly.
Well, I mean, but that's where this is actually, and that's where the biggest potential for this is. Those Kai cars, those little tiny cars in Japan, it was so essential to have great fuel economy for those
Right.
cars.
Right.
Pickup trucks. No one cares what a minivan can tow. No one cares what a sedan can tow.
Right.
But pickup trucks, ironically, the vehicles that are most likely to be used for towing, they're the towing numbers that are probably closest to the ragged edge because that's where I want to
Sure.
get the most out of
Right,
this.
and that's where the competition is, right? They're competing on that metric. And
Likewise, you have Volkswagen with clean diesel.
And-
it's like, I have a Prius alternative. Look, this is clean.
and Ford with their hybrids. Again, it's like this is the number, this is like the, everyone's measuring this to be the best on the hill in that metric. And there's a lot of, I mean, look, there's ROI, there's return on investment.
Sure.
If you could go and you could get that number inched up just a little bit to be best on the block, it's horsepower numbers. We've seen this with horsepower numbers. Remember the Mazda RX-8 had a thing where they're like,
Miata numbers were.
and they wound up giving money back to people. It's like, oh yeah, sorry about that. But it wasn't until someone actually independently verified these cars on a dynamometer to say, yeah, it's nowhere near that horsepower.
Yep.
Bragging rights.
So back to Mitsubishi.
Sure.
Ongoing. Probably going to see a lot of people being fired.
A company without much to brag about.
Company doesn't have a lot much to brag about. They the NHTSA has opened up an investigation because 2 of the models were built for export. Mitsubishi North America says they've looked back for about 6 years of data and they haven't had any issues, any discrepancies, and it was Japan only. So that's where we stand. But if you went from the first was a couple years now to 25 years, this has legs, so to speak.
Oh yeah, definitely.
We published some of the numbers just recently. So we actually looked at the fuel economy we were getting from the most recent Mitsubishi tests and then compared them to what the EP estimates were. And actually, the EP estimates were a bit higher by 1 or 2 miles per gallon, but not totally out of the, I mean, we've seen other cars that are like that too.
Right.
We're not exactly like the EPA test. So there's no clear indication like when we saw Ford where it was like so many miles per
number.
gallon.
Right. There's not that they were doing something here, changing it. They weren't boosting their numbers, whether it was legitimately or not.
Right.
So
But I
we
mean,
haven't
but
seen
we're
that
saying,
yet.
again, 10%, I mean, it's possible. So I mean,
Sure.
it's worthwhile looking into the practice of this company.
Sure, definitely. Another example of a company behaving badly, it's a very gray area actually, is Snapchat. And a recent crash, recent lawsuits that call into question some of the features of Snapchat.
Yeah, look, I mean, we're not, talking tech, we're talking cars, but I mean, what's really interesting about Snapchat is they have this filter, and it's been around for a while. It's been around since, I think, 2013, where you could go take a picture and you could tell everyone how fast you were going when you take that picture. I personally have a hard time figuring out what is the good use case of that.
Yeah, I'm struggling with that too. I mean, okay, you say you were on the Concorde. That doesn't exist anymore.
Well,
you have to have your phone
but the
turned on.
Concorde didn't have Wi-Fi, so I couldn't actually use
Okay, yeah.
Snapchat.
Right,
on
you're
the
on your
plane.
737,
But,
and
but I mean, by and large, a lot of people are using this, and they're driving around the car, and they're like, look at me, I'm driving 100 miles an hour, or look out the window, look how fast I'm going. And this is some way, again, bragging rights, people competing on this. And we have seen a rash of, teenagers who have done this, have been encouraged to show how fast they're driving while they Snapchat, and some of them have been killed.
poor decision-making group as a whole, not a lot of experience driving as a whole,
Yeah.
and then using this in a look-at-me social media scene. Look, I don't use Snapchat. Nieces and nephews do. Hilarious face swapping.
Sure.
Putting on all the different filters, great. But I don't see, again, the real need for this unless base jumping, parachuting, but why would you do it?
I've got better things to do.
Well, I've got better things to do, like pull the ripcord maybe, make sure I don't hit my head. But, a GoPro for that, or
Right,
strapping the phone
Right.
to. It's one of those things like it's cute, it's great. Yes, there's speed limit apps, there's things you can put on I don't understand why it's the social media aspect and what the need is to share this that I'm breaking the law. But again, I don't understand the need to show how much I'm violating the law is and then post it to begin with.
Yeah, I mean, obviously they're not advertising this as go as fast as you can and post it, but it's like,
But what's the use for it? I'm doing the speed
for it?
limit. Hey, look, I'm doing 65, and there's a sign that says 65.
Right,
Let's
exactly.
be honest, that's not what you should be doing.
And obviously it's personal responsibility, right? I mean,
Very much so.
Again, you could shut them down if someone else is going to do something. I mean, people have to be responsible, and teens have to be responsible too. I mean, look how many videos there are on YouTube of people, taking a video of them with a GoPro jumping off their house into a pool. I mean, there's all types of stuff that's encouraged
Yeah,
because you could share it and get likes.
And I mean, there is a debatable line between what has benefit versus risk and what doesn't have much benefit versus risk. Personally, I can't see a whole lot of benefit towards this Snapchat filter. I mean, on the other hand, I got into a Hyundai Elantra this morning, and there's a little, you must pay attention to the road, don't pay too much attention to this infotainment system. I mean,
Which you have to focus on constantly to do anything.
I was reading it in my driveway, luckily, while Snapchatting how fast No, I wasn't.
I just got to pause you right there because it happens more and more. You're driving along, and all of a sudden the big sign comes up with 3 paragraphs reading how you need to be safe and not read
What
stuff
happens on
and pay attention
Nissan?
while you're
This
driving.
drives me nuts because we have a bunch of Nissans in the fleet now. We have an Altima and we have a Sentra.
Yeah.
And when the temperature drops below, say, 37 degrees and there's icing conditions that could happen, it has a big warning.
Well, there's
that
a
comes
storm
up.
somewhere within 500 miles of your house. There's a weather
Thunderstorm
alert. Yeah.
warning. And to get rid of any of this stuff, a lot of cars, like the ice warning, will just say, oh, it's going to ice, and then it goes away. The Nissan, it's like, warning just stays there until I push the button. And so it's like, okay, so you're warning me, and now you've caused the distraction.
Yes,
But to go
exactly.
back, so okay, I mean, these I think I followed you down the road. The road to distraction. So, these infotainment systems have a risk, but they also have a benefit. I'm just not sure what the benefit is of Snapchat when it creates a risk for a clientele, a demographic that is more prone to making less than awesome
again,
decisions.
coming back to the responsibility of that company, of the responsibility of a car maker, and it's like, what is ultimately the result of that? So, I mean, is the result. So again, look at the little tiny cars in Japan. Okay, you could argue that it's 1 or 2 miles per gallon if cars are getting 60 miles per gallon anyway. But what is the ultimate result of that? Is it, as a society, are we going to say, well, it's okay to cheat a little bit? Or are we going to go and hold these automakers responsible for this and say, look, you know what? I don't trust Mitsubishi anymore. I don't trust Ford or Hyundai or whatever because they're falsifying these things. And is that going to drive away the market from those car companies?
Yeah, we're not asking to put you at a disadvantage. We're just asking you to tell the truth.
Right.
And here it is. We're not asking you to stop something that's taking teens' attention away from anything else. We're just asking you to not put out something that puts others in harm while they're doing it in a 3,000-pound vehicle at beyond the speed limit. Again, for people who have a low level of driving skill. I'm sorry, a teenager doesn't have the same driving skill as someone who's 25 or 30, let alone someone who's 40 or 50. Okay.
Right. Talking about automaker responsibility, one thing that we hope for is that when products have issues, they get resolved. And there actually is good corporate news in that Chrysler is recalling Jeep Grand Cherokees and Dodge Chargers and Chrysler 300s to fix a confusing shifter design.
Yes, and this is kind of a, it's very interesting. So I mean, the story with shifters, okay? I mean, if you're old enough, you remember when cars were all Prindles, we call them, right? Park, reverse.
It was a big lever. It made chunky noises.
Maybe it was up
It
here.
stayed in the gear that you put it in.
There was a mechanical connection to the transmission. And what happened, they wound up, kind of deregulating that and making it so we can kind of do whatever you want.
Well, the other thing that happened is transmissions became electronic. So
they became electronic.
It's all computer shifted. You don't need a link.
But there was actually regulation that you had to shift in a certain way. They deregulated that and said, okay, you could try new things. And innovation is awesome when it comes to the auto industry. Okay, there is great ways that cars have changed in so many ways and they've gotten so many better. So many ways better. But here is a situation where some of them have gotten better and some have gotten really confusing. And there's many automakers that have shifters that are confusing, and we've called them out time and time again from many automakers. But the thing with Chrysler is they built a lot of these confusing shifters.
Right, and what was confusing about them?
Well, they would index back to the center slot. So they were sort of a fixed pod. You would detent it one way and it would pop back to the center. So you never really know, spring loaded, so you would also have it where you would push forward to go in reverse, you would pull back again, you would possibly be in neutral.
So hard to find the reverse. Make certain you were in park.
It wasn't by touch. That was the big thing. You took, when you're parking, you slam it up to the top, whether it's forward or up on the column, and you knew you're in park. You pull it down, you're in a drive gear. But here you could be in neutral. You could leave the car in neutral, you could get out, it could roll on you. You could leave it in drive, take your foot off, and all of a sudden it's going to roll forward.
And that's what
you.
was happening. People would stop the car, say they'd get out to get the newspaper or get something, think it was in park, and it wasn't in park. And then it would run them over.
Exactly. It would pull them, and they open the door and step out. It would with them as soon as their foot came off.
And there were over 100 crashes because of this, and Chrysler says 41 injuries. So I mean, this isn't just us griping. Oh, it's confusing. This is
right. This isn't iDrive where it's
mowing
annoying
people over in their driveway.
Exactly. This isn't not figuring out how to adjust the tone and
And there wasn't a fail-safe. I think the biggest issue is that there wasn't some sort of fail-safe that says, hey, okay, you stop the car, and you're getting off the brake with the door open, maybe we should automatically put this into park.
Which a lot of companies do. I mean, there are other companies with these shifters. There's
whether it's Audi, BMW, Mercedes,
right.
And whether it's you turn off the car or whether you open the door, whatever it is, there's some level of fail-safe at the end that doesn't leave the car in neutral or gear. Chrysler didn't have that.
Right.
And that's a major issue.
So they haven't said what the specifics of the recall are, but they will change that electronic shift logic. Likely what they will do is when you open the door, turn off the ignition, it goes into park. Now, more telling is that Chrysler's customers complained too, and they don't even build this shifter anymore. They got rid of the shifter for 2016 in the Grand Cherokee. They had gotten rid of the shifter in 2015 for the Charger and the 300. So at least it's good to see that, although it sadly takes a few years and injuries to occur, that at least change can happen to solve problems.
But I think there's a story that's not being told. I mean, everyone's reading about the story, and we're learning what the word monostable means. And monostable is what you described, right?
I've been dropping that into casual conversation all the time.
A monostable table, but it's, and that's where it goes in the same position, no matter what it is. It's not that positive. I know it's in park because my shifter is up front.
It can't go any further.
Right, exactly. But the untold story, I think, is the fact that the reason Chrysler did it was so they were copying luxury automakers.
That's right.
And Chrysler went and, yes, there are problems with it. Chrysler went and redesigned it, and then went one step further, which is the right thing to do, is to have a recall and actually go and address the vehicles that are out there in the field. But there are other vehicles out there, including, like you said, Mercedes-Benz, who we have a brand new Mercedes-Benz GLC, a brand new model. And that car, you put it into, you're in drive, you turn the engine off. Almost any other vehicle that has this type of monostable thing, it goes into park. I turn the car off, it goes into park. Well, this car, Mercedes-Benz Logic, you hit the car off, it goes into neutral. And then the car can roll as soon as you take your foot off the brake.
Until you open the door.
Until you open the door, and then it'll
stop.
Yeah, but I was in my garage the other day, which is actually on a slope, and I went there and I turned it off because I had just got it out of the MDX, which operates. I turn the car off, it goes into park. I had that the other day. Then I go into the Mercedes-Benz, I turn the car off, it goes into neutral, I take my foot off the brake, I go down to get my things, and I almost go through the garage door. So I mean, this is, obviously there's a better way of doing this.
That most car companies have figured out.
Most car companies have figured out exactly, and perhaps there aren't as many injuries with Mercedes because they're not building as many of them as these exclusive luxury cars as some of these more mainstream models. So I mean, just again, this goes back to the responsibility. If there's a better way to do it, do it.
Well, also, it's not that that we or NHTSA or other organizations are asking for you to manufacture a new seat. You need to have stronger bumpers. Change a couple lines of code.
And again, actually,
for goodness sake, change the logic. Your logic already says when door opens, put in park. Okay, when car off, put in park. I'm not a programmer, but it's got to be a lot easier than building a new body in white.
The other thing is actually going back to an earlier part of the conversation. What's the benefit of throwing it in neutral? Benefit versus risk. I don't,
And if
they
it
wrote
is-
the line of code to put it in neutral.
Right.
If it is
Why?
for alignment, for something
Or
technical,
towing,
for
something
towing,
that happens 0.1%.
then you know what? Another line of code that you can set it for that mode. Go through command. You could do everything else in command, for goodness sake, okay?
Yes.
Then you know what? There should be something that
You
the towing or the
can-
service department or through the OBD2. There's got to be something versus we'll put all of our customers in danger to make it easier for the tech.
So here's the thing, and you're right, and that's kind of one bright spot of how these cars are really, they're computers on wheels, right? And then it's a bright spot of the future of updating things. There are those possibilities. They don't have to replace the transmission. They have to change the code. And we just saw this with our Tesla.
With the Tesla, yep.
So Tesla, they unrolled the summon feature, which was an update over the air at night on our Tesla P85, Model S P85D. And there were some issues that we had with the summon feature, and one of the features, for instance, we found is like if you start the car moving, which you could use an app and hit it and make it move on its own. If the app crashes or you close the app, the car keeps on going. And we raised that issue among other things, and we said, how about when the app closes, the car stops? Wouldn't that make more sense? And they quickly checked. I mean, within a week, they actually updated the car over the air. They changed it. Right now, you close that app, the car stops. And it's like, this is the type of thing that hopefully, when these things are found, they could be remedied much, much quicker.
Right. Hopefully, we'll see that going forward in the future. We're already pretty late in the podcast, but I feel bad because we have a mini parked behind us, and we haven't said word one about that.
It's there. And good night, folks.
That's it. Thank you for talking. Minis aren't mini all the time anymore.
Not so
now.
much.
Yeah. This is about the size of Volkswagen Golf.
Yeah, this is one of the few minis I've liked a lot.
I admit I like this car.
It's roomy enough with kids. They can clamber in and out without awkward suicide doors on one side or flipping the seat forward. I haven't spent a lot of time in the four-door Mini versus the four-door Clubman.
The less mini.
The less mini, maxi mini. You know what? The controls are so much better than they were historically. It's fun to drive. The seats fit me well. But again, the controls were just that advancement alone has made it an option versus instead of taking home at night or even driving on a trip versus just
There's
no
still
chance.
some crazy here. I mean, again, going back to benefit.
Still
versus,
marketing.
Benefit versus going back to benefit versus reward. The split rear doors.
Yeah, odd, and they're not the easiest thing to just kind of fling shut. They're weird. The bisected view, the little wipers.
there's not a lot of view.
There's definitely headaches to it.
also-
But it's a fun car, and it gives you space to carry your stuff and have that mini experience.
I gotta say that I really do miss having John on the show because I miss Fight Club.
Oh,
And,
sweet. Oh, nice.
And saying that it's not bad because it's not as mini as the other minis is kind of faint praise.
Sure.
And to me, all those things you said were true. Okay, the car's got, it's a little more useful. But the thing is, it kind of takes away the point of the real Mini. I mean, the real Mini to me is a fun car. It has limited use. Obviously, it's really cramped and all that, but it's really, really fun. To me, yeah, okay, and this is marginally better than a normal Mini for all these reasons. But if you put it up against a Golf, it's got no reason because it's trying to be a Golf, and the Golf does just about everything better.
You're right. The Golf is quieter. The Golf rides better. It arguably may steer better. Maybe quicker than this whomping 1.5 liter 3-cylinder turbo we've got here.
This is, for me, in the game of discussion when someone's looking for a small car now.
It is in the game. It's a new segment.
Do you have
your rich friends.
Do you have an odd British affectation that you need to play to, and that's why you're ignoring the Anschluss of the Germans coming across the channel?
We're getting very personal now.
Even though they're owned both German companies.
Well,
but we won't talk about that.
But
before it wasn't even in the game.
No,
it
but-
was you'll kill yourself trying to figure out the controls. You'll bang your head against the car trying to get in and out. Now
no
it's at
room
least
for anything,
there's no room
yeah.
for anything.
I can't find
beyond
the
a
lock.
thought.
But it's almost
Yeah.
like applauding, Porsche getting into the luxury sedan and SUV market. I mean, they didn't have a place there. It was very limited being a sports car. And yes, they go there, and yes, they'll make more money, and yes, they'll go sell a lot of them.
But I'll argue that the Macan brings something to the SUV market that wasn't there. I mean, the Macan is a great small SUV. That is a pretty good subcompact hatchback. I mean, the only thing it brings is a premium feel. I mean, the doors feel heavier than a Golf, and that it's $31,000, which is all the money.
Right.
It's
Yeah.
not a value proposition.
Oh no.
It is not a value proposition.
Maseratis and Minis are not value propositions.
Well, Mazdas we like. So.
We do like, yeah. So yeah, I mean, yeah, you're right. $31,000. If you're, I mean, I can see who's going to buy this car. It's going to be hipsters in Portland, either one, either Maine or Oregon, who need a small family car with a back seat. They'd be better off with a Golf Sport Wagon.
Mazda 3.
Yeah.
Yes,
I mean,
there's
some
certainly
really nice
better vehicles, but on its own, where it stands, heck of a lot better than it was. It is an evolution of that car for a positive. Whether the world needs more minis or not.
So now
that's a
need
different discussion.
A mini, true small SUV, the mini pickup truck, just go for the.
The Mini
I
heavy duty.
Go the Porsche way.
I'll go on record right now. I will not defend the mini pickup truck.
Well,
And
wait,
I
they
was
used
not
to
a mini
have
fan.
that,
I was
though.
not a
Was
mini
there-
fan. This is the first one. I think I said Tom. Oh, we're talking the mini
No,
because I finally
actually,
like this.
You're right. There's a lot of Minis that I've driven and have been like, I drive it home and I'm like, this is great. I got the Mini. And then like the next time I go out, I'm like, I've got all weekend with this car. This car, I enjoy it, but yeah, it's not let's go with it's not a value proposition.
Yeah.
So that's going to wrap it up for this episode of Talking Cars. As always, we thank you for watching. We'll see you again next time.